They tell you that the British government and the English people welcomed refugees here in the late 1930s. Actually, it's not true. People had to fight to get refugees here. I'm very proud that my father was involved in the kinder transport and taking one boy into his household in those days. But there were people, just as there are now, who were fighting for a better world and realized the situation that the people were facing under the Nazi government and helped organize people to come here. We've got the same job to do now, and we've got the same people to persuade now. In 2003, before the big anti-war demonstration, if you went across London, you saw posters in large numbers of houses saying, "Not in my name." I always wished it said not in our names, but never mind. Not in my name. What we need now is for houses across London to have this in their windows, so that it becomes commonplace for people to say refugees are welcome here. We need to travel on the tube and have people wearing welcome refugees badges. We need to make this the common sense as it should be for today. My name's Paul Mackney. I'm co-chair of the Greece Solidarity Campaign. Recently we were in Athens and went down to the port at Piraeus, and we were there the day they closed the northern border. There were people camped out in former warehouses in Piraeus, where they used to keep wheat and various other goods, in semi-darkness, on damp floors, families there who had been hoping to get through northern Greece through Idiomene. They were asking us, well, where can we go? We've just heard, they just arrived the day before, we've just heard the northern borders are closed, where can we go? And geographically they worked out the way to go was through Italy. So it's not a surprise that people have now been trying to come through Libya and then up through Italy, and that's a much more treacherous journey, and that's why people died last week or over the last week. In my head, I hold the Western European leaders guilty of murder. They should open the borders, they should ensure safe passage, they should welcome the refugees in the different countries. It's a disgrace, the pittance, the low number that Cameron is boasting he's allowing in of Syrian refugees. These are not people who've chosen to travel across Europe. When we spoke to them about their experiences, every one of them had had horrific experiences of their villages being bombed by barrel bombs, or their houses being invaded by people, and so on and so forth. Stories which people here would be horrified by if it was a member of their own family. Well, they are a member of our family. We're all in the human family, and that's why it's our job to make sure that we argue and argue that people should stand up to racism and stand with the refugees. So when you hear some dates given later in this meeting, which I'm sure you will, of people going to Calais or collecting things for Calais, try and be involved. Try and get your friends and neighbours or your workplaces, or if you're in unions, if you're not in unions, you should be in unions, but get them involved. A good reason for joining is so you can get them involved. Your student unions, your schools, whatever. Get the schools to adopt some of the places which are trying to help refugees. Consider going with volunteer brigades, for example, to Greece to help with the social solidarity that's going on there. I have to say, the Greek people over the last 10 years have suffered the biggest decline in standard of living in Western Europe since the Second World War. Yet by and large, they have stood up and given support to the refugees coming in.
Paul Mackney, Greece Solidarity Campaign, you have been in Athens, you have seen examples of solidarity of Greek people to the refugees. What can you report us?
Well, the situation in Greece is desperate. My feeling is that the government have had this Turkish-European Union deal imposed on them. Very few of the refugees want to go back to Turkey because that's where they've come from. There's, as far as we can see, not enough of them are having proper processing, even by the tight asylum laws that exist now. Where we went to in Piraeus, people were camping in old warehouses, trying to get some shelter, and they just closed the border. Excuse me. The situation was that they were thinking, well, how can we get to Northern Europe? And they were working out that the route was through Italy. So now we've seen people taking an even more hazardous sea journey from Libya to Italy to try and get to asylum in Northern Europe.
What do Greek people do for refugees? Because you know that Greece is torn by a very serious crisis and most of Greek people are also in desperate conditions.
Well, I can tell you what I saw. The day we arrived, there was a welcome refugee day in Syntagma Square in central Athens. That's the Constitution Square in front of the Parliament.
The famous square of the protests.
Yeah. It's like Trafalgar Square here, except it's in front of the Parliament. And over 10,000 Greeks bought money, food, toys, medicine, and so on for refugees who were stuck in Greece. The Greeks, because they have themselves suffered so much severe austerity, have a whole alternative network of social solidarity clinics, of food provision for people, and so on and so forth. Those volunteers in the social solidarity networks are now doing a double shift. They're working to support Greek people who've been impoverished by what the European Union and the Troika and the IMF did to Greece, and they're also supporting the refugees. So even in rural Greece, for example, Kalamata in southern Greece, they've got 60 doctors volunteering for nothing to give at least 5 hours a week to keep a health service going for people who don't have insurance or don't have papers or don't have rights. Well, in Greece there's been historic families which were on the right, who were in the civil war or with the Metaxa dictatorship before that. Often they've had the police jobs and jobs in the army, and now there is a far-right organization called Golden Dawn, Chrysiavgi in Greek, and they are trying to exploit the situation to build what they would see as a nationalist, but every detail of it is like the Nazis or the fascists, turn Greece into that sort of country. So, for example, they've been going to the markets and going round asking people to show their permits, and if they're not Greek, they've been trashing their stalls. They went quiet because a number of their leaders were brought for trial after the murder of a rap singer who was against fascism. But it's a bit disturbing that in the last week in Chios the island below Lesbos, which everyone hears about, Golden Dawn started attacking some of the refugees there, Golden Dawn supporters. But there is also in Greece an active anti-fascist movement which we hope will take them on, and the government is certainly against Golden Dawn.
However, far right makes big gains but never gets the majority.
I think people in Greece remember what the Nazis did to Greece. Hundreds of thousands of people starved, died, tortured, well over 100 villages burnt down, all the villages in a number of villages shot by the Nazis. So there's a historic opposition to fascism. But on the other hand, we've seen how a fascist party can get a few more points. Hitler never had 50% of the vote. Hitler came to power constitutionally even though he didn't have a majority. And what he said was the people should have realized when we were small and stamped on us when we were small. And I think people in Greece have that message of no tolerance.